Is De'Aaron Fox overrated? Welcome back to another episode of Spurs in Focus right here on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify. You also got Amazon Podcasts, YouTube Music, Pocket Cast. The list goes on and on. Go subscribe right now. And also, don't forget about the Substack. Spurs in Focus Substack is completely free. Sign up today. Just Google it. Click subscribe. You're a part of the crew. As always, I thank you for making Spurs in Focus your first and only spot for all things San Antonio Spurs. Ignore the rest. You only want to come here to Spurs in Focus. My name is Jeff Garcia, longtime Spurs writer in San Antonio. First off, apologies for another audio-only show. Unfortunately, due to some scheduling conflicts, myself and the guest couldn't really coordinate a time for a video. But we should be back on camera this week with our live show with Minicamp, so stay tuned for that. But what are we talking about today? We're going to be getting into De'Aaron Fox. Specifically, a few weeks ago, Bleacher Report had their list of the top overrated players in the NBA. And lo and behold, De'Aaron Fox was named. We're going to start off with why he is overrated, then talk about why he's not, and then sum it up, and then catch up some Spurs news, including some LeBron James news that impacts the Spurs. Or I guess it doesn't, but you'll see where we're getting at. Let's go ahead and bring in our guest. He is Rey Carter. He is on X at RREYVING. Ray, welcome back, buddy.
Hey, man. Thank you for letting me come back. And, hopefully, like you said, we'll be on camera next time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we tried to get Ray earlier this week, but he has some schedule hiccups too. So we're just glad that he is back. Again, follow him on X at RREYVING right now. He'll talk all things Spurs, sports, so much more, including his favorite, wrestling. He loves that wrestling, man. So
yes, sir.
Talk to him a lot about it. Ray, let's go to dive into it. So a few weeks ago, Bleacher Report put out their list ranking the top 10 overrated players in the NBA. And landing at number 8 was De'Aaron Fox. I have a quote here from that article. It says, quote, De'Aaron Fox is the highest paid player on the Spurs by a mile. That's true. That's mostly because San Antonio's other key contributors are all making rookie scale wages, but it's also because the Spurs decided last summer, for some reason, to give Fox a 4-year, $222 million extension. The article continues to go on to say that, quote, Fox is, to give him some credit here, technically a 2-time All-Star. And then they all go on to say, but he isn't the most creative floor general you'll find, quote, end quote. The article goes on to say, quote, he has had good numbers on bad teams, just posted solid stats for a great team, which is about you expect from a fringe star. So there it is. Bleacher Report saying that De'Aaron Fox is one of the NBA's most overrated players. Ray, let's start off with the argument of why he is. Kick us off, Ray. Why do you think he gets that label of an overrated player?
I think it comes down to in the sense of he did play for Sacramento. So when you look at his squad at that time, he was the only player that stood out in Sacramento. So I feel like in that aspect, you can make that argument. Well, like you mentioned, he's played on a bad team. He was mainly their number one guy. So, of course, he's going to be that star player that, a lot of teams are trying to aim for in the rebuild. But in terms of that aspect, you can make the argument, he's overrated because he was only on a bad team. He looked good. It's that fool's gold in the sense.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he started his career on a very bad Kings team. They had a 1 year where they had a pretty good, decent season where they made it to the playoffs, but that was it. They were like kind of a one and done team in the postseason. But you can understand why he gets that label, and the biggest reason why is the contract. I think that's what's really getting him that label, is because that is the biggest issue. 4 years, over $200 million, a max extension. It rises up to $50 million at one point, and then eventually $60 million. That's star money. That's near franchise player money. And I think when you get that type of payday, you're expected to do a lot more. And you look at the analysis, some people say, well, the production value is well below what he's getting paid. You look at Dylan Harper, you look at Steph Castle. Some argue that those two younger players do more than Fox, but Fox is getting the payday. Ray, how about this too? How much do you think his in 2026 NBA Finals performance really hurt him in getting this label?
Oh, it hurt big time. I mean, because when you look back at the trade when it happened, it was all about, oh, San Antonio gets their star player to match up with Wemby. You're learning from Chris Paul, who was on the way out. So in the trade deadline when we trade for him, it looked good. But obviously the playoff experience, he went further than he did with the Kings. The big layup attempt at the 29-point lead blown, it hurt him a lot because you see it now. He's become a meme, especially in the offseason.
Yeah, he has been. I mean, you look at even during the what was it, the World Cup. Anytime somebody lost a lead, they would put his name, his photo up there in their jersey. I mean, he's gotten a bad label, and you overall look at what it is, and I think how he played in the NBA Finals. You know, going for the basket when he should have killed the clock in one of the games, turnovers here, not producing offensively during critical moments of the game really hurt him. And then that is the big issue. Again, it goes back to what he is getting paid. Now, and I also think too, because he came into San Antonio with a lot of hype, didn't he, Ray? How many people were saying he's the co-star? He is the number 2. He's clearly the number 2 next to Wemby. But there's some arguments saying, well, maybe he's not. Maybe it's Castle. Maybe it's Harper. Maybe it's somebody else. How much do you think the expectations hurt him in getting this label of being overrated?
I think it hurt him a lot because when we looked at De'Aaron Fox, he had a great season. Obviously, he was an offensive firepower that the Spurs needed in that time. And just his performance, especially when it came to that playoffs and that finals, only averaging, 12 points a game, it seemed like, shooting near low 30%, whether it's from the 3 or the field goal range. The expectations were a lot because San Antonio, despite giving up practically a bag of chips for him, they signed him to that max year contract, which, hey, you're getting paid a lot of this money. Go out there, mass produce what we need from you. Yeah,
exactly. You know, again, he's coming into San Antonio with these expectations when the trade went down with the Kings, and what were fans looking for? What were just NBA, talking heads looking for? An elite primary, secondary creator. Well, maybe you could say that maybe Harper is that. Maybe Castle is that. Maybe somebody else is that. You're also looking at, how he was excelling with the Kings, and that came along with the territory of, that Kings reputation he had, he's going to do it here in San Antonio. But you look back at it, and now you fast forward, you're thinking, okay, I can understand, and maybe you can understand why people think he's just a mediocre, average player. But at the same time, it's not his fault, right? He came into what was going to be a loaded Spurs team, and here we are. They are very, very loaded. You can understand the arguments. Pre-Spurs, he's this top floor general with the Kings. He's clearly the number 1 or the number 2 option for Sacramento. He led the Kings to the postseason in that 1 year. And it was him. He's clutch player of the year. There were so many expectations of it. And on paper, it hasn't lived up to that. But we can understand why he is getting this label. Ray, any other reasons why you think he gets this label before we get into why he isn't an overrated player?
No, I think that perfectly covers it because, like you're mentioning, he now came to a Spurs team that kind of grew in the sense of now we're looking to see, did we actually need De'Aaron Fox, or did we just pull the trigger on it to make sure he didn't leave?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because that also lends to why he gets overrated label, because Harper and Castle, those 2 guys just came out of nowhere. I mean, nobody saw Castle explode on the scene. Remember that draft class he was in, it was considered one of the weakest. You go back, I'm pretty sure Castle goes number 1 if they have to redo it again. But you see Castle's explosion, you see Harper explosion, and what are you seeing from fans to sports talking heads? You, me, you're like, play those guys more minutes, bench Fox, get rid of them. Those guys are the future, not Fox. But you look at it around, I also think too, maybe the Spurs didn't think they were going to land the number 4 pick in that draft or the number 2 pick to get Harper. Here they are with Fox. Well, we got to deal with him in a good way, not in a bad way. It's a good problem to have, the Spurs having 3 quality guards. But you see the youth, those players that just got into the league, Harper and Castle, putting pressure on Fox to play better, and he hasn't. But maybe he doesn't really have to because of Wemby and, of course, the supporting cast. But you know what? Those are pretty much the big reasons why he gets this label of being overrated. When we get back, we're going to talk why he should not be labeled overrated and more with Mr. Rey Carter. He is on X at RREYVING, raving. I think that's what it is. He likes to rave, everybody. Put that disco music, no. Put that techno music, and he's raving. All right, we'll be back talking about De'Aaron Fox, why he is not overrated. We're back right here on Spurs in Focus, joined by Rey Carter. He is on X at raving, RREYVING. You want to give him a follow right now. We're talking about De'Aaron Fox and the recent article or list, I should say, that Bleacher Report put out ranking the top overrated players, and landing at number 8 was Spurs De'Aaron Fox. Now, in the first segment, we talked about why he gets that label. Let's talk about why he shouldn't get that label now. And Rey, I think we're dancing around in that first segment. He came into a loaded Spurs team. This is a team that doesn't need him to be Sacramento De'Aaron Fox. This is a loaded Spurs team where he's not the number one, maybe not even the number 2 option. It's Wemby, clearly the number 1. And again, he came into a situation where nobody could have foreseen that Harper would blossom the way he did. Or maybe they could. I mean, you're the number 2 pick. Yeah, you should be playing at that level. Or even Castle coming on the scene and just exploding. So I think, coming in with those high expectations should have been tempered with because of the situation he was coming to. He's coming from the Sacramento Kings, a team that's consistently trying to get better, to a ready-made Spurs team where he doesn't have to do it all. So I think that should not be a knock on him. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, he was, a top draft prospect at that time. So, I could bring it up. I think he only had Domantas Sabonis to rely on, and it's kind of hard to make a team with a star point guard and star center. Remember, they had Tyrese Halliburton. They traded him off a couple of years. So that kind of duo that a lot of teams build off of, it was broken off really early, and we kind of saw what Tyrese Halliburton can do on a team like the Pacers, and look at what that led him to. But yeah, it shouldn't be a knock on him because he could only do so much. Yeah, they had Mike Brown, and there was drama with that. But you look at that roster, and Domantas Sabonis and Fox were the only key aspects of it. And going to a team like San Antonio, who relatively were young, they were starting to turn in that corner where we were like, okay, this team can improve as long as we get those vets that we need. This team can do, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, you're right. And here's the other thing, too. You want to add to the reasons why he should not be considered overrated, again, because the situation that he's in. Again, he doesn't need to be the hero as he was in Sacramento. He doesn't need to be that elite player because you have Wemby. Here's the other thing, too. Another reason why he's not overrated, Rey, is because he still brings that elite speed to the team. They love to play downhill. We know the Spurs love to get up and down that court. Well, how about one of the quickest players in the league right now in silver and black? He brings that downhill pressure in the paint. He fits well next to Wemby. He creates easy looks for Wemby and the rest of his teammates. And he contributed meaningfully during the regular season, at least early in the postseason before the finals happened. I also want to bring this up too. You look at last year, Rey, he contributed 6.4 win shares for the Spurs. So and basically that's just a fancy way of saying, because of his play, the Spurs were able to get at least about 6-5 wins because of De'Aaron Fox. Okay, fine. Wow. Maybe that's low, but again, without those 6 wins, Rey, perhaps the Spurs don't get the top spot in the West. Perhaps, they don't finish with one of the better, they'll definitely finish one of the best records in the NBA, but not one of the best records. So he does contribute to winning. And also, too, another reason why I think he should not be given the label of being a overrated player, because he doesn't have to live up to that hype that we saw in Sacramento, Rey. You look at what he did last season. He averaged about 18 points per game, 6.2 assists, 3.8 rebounds, and 1.2 steals, shooting about 49% from the field and about 33% from the three. And he played 72 games. Durable production. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I said it, especially to some friends that call me crazy because I've been an avid De'Aaron Fox defender. Is
Mm-hmm.
look, it comes to a point where we can look at Castle and we look at Harper and we're like, yeah, we need to play him more. Look at that
Yeah,
OKC series, those first two games.
for
We
sure.
saw what the Spurs were without Fox, and yeah, we were one win and one loss. However, the turnover battle from Castle, especially,
Mm-hmm.
it hurt the team in some very big moments. So
Yeah.
seeing, like you brought up, he does bring a presence that the Spurs team still needs. Now, granted,
Mm-hmm.
you know, without those 6 wins, yeah, we're maybe looking at third place, and
Mm-hmm.
who knows, maybe we do get eliminated first round because I think
Right.
third place, what they played, was it Denver?
I think so. Yeah, they may have had a little rougher path to the NBA
So
Finals. Yeah.
exactly, and maybe we're talking about, oh well, if only we had Fox for those that games, we would have been there. And it's a different
Mm-hmm.
conversation, but he definitely brings a presence, and that aspect that you're bringing up, it's important to this
Yeah.
first team.
And it's hard to ignore this because we saw him kind of flounder, not kind of, he did flounder in the NBA Finals, the biggest stage uh, during the Spurs playoff run. But y- y- yeah, again, it's tough, man. It's tough. That's the NBA Finals, but you cannot erase what he did in the regular season and early in the postseason for San Antonio without his contributions in the regular season and early in the playoffs. Perhaps the Spurs don't get to the NBA Finals. He pretty much rose up a few times for the Spurs during the early stages of the playoffs, and again, without him, the Spurs likely don't sniff a series versus the Knicks. And again, his overall postseason numbers, he averaged about 16 points per game, 41% shooting. But we also forget about this. He was dealing with an ankle injury. I think
Yep.
he really, really was. And, the Spurs still had their faith in him. Mitch Johnson said they were not going to stop giving him the ball. Remember that whole thing? Remember, no, we're still going to play him. We're still going to play him at the end of games. So the Spurs believed in him. He believed himself, but he was dealing with an injury that limited himself on that court. The speed really took a hit. But again, I cannot forget, and you cannot disregard Ray, what he did in the regular season and early postseason to get the Spurs to the NBA Finals. Let's go to wrap it up now, at least for this topic here. The bottom line is this. I think Ray, slapping him with the label of overrated is a bit too harsh, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, you brought up injuries. The times that he's been here in San Antonio, when we traded for him, he was injured, and then obviously the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs, he got injured against Minnesota, and the rest was history, as they say. And look, I do think it's a little bit harsh. Yes, it was a rough playoff experience. However, at the end of the day, you take off De'Aaron Fox, and we're talking about maybe a team that goes from second place and possibly competing with the OKC Thunder
Yeah.
to now being that team where we're like middle of the pack. We're right
Mm-hmm.
there, but we need one more piece. So I do think, yeah, his play did cost the Spurs. There's no doubt. I
Mm-hmm.
still think it's a little bit just too harsh, saying, hey, he's overrated and that contract is killing the Spurs and
Yeah.
yada yada. So we just got to see how it plays out.
And if we want to be honest too, Ray, it wasn't just Fox who had a bad finals performance. I mean, look at Keldon Johnson. Was he really playing like the sixth man of the year during the entire playoffs? No, he
Nope.
wasn't. What about Wemby? Wemby didn't really shine bright as many people thought he did. Now, he played great, yes, obviously, but a lot of other players really didn't step up to the plate in the big stage of the NBA Finals. It wasn't just Fox. It was a collective. I mean, hell, even Mitch Johnson, admitted that he was a rookie coach in the NBA Finals. And let's just face it, he got out coached by Mike Brown a few times. So again, a lot of blame is going on Fox when it maybe really shouldn't. But the point is I think he's not a overrated player. He's not a bust for the Spurs, nothing like that. What's really hurting him though is just the pay. The pay is hurting him. That
Yep.
big gap between his biweekly checks and what he did on the court. And that is really what hurting him. But you boil it down, he's very productive. We went over some numbers. He contributed to win shares. We talked about that. He's an all-star caliber guard. Uh, he's still young, 28. He fits the Spurs timeline and their style. He works well with Wemby. And look, every player is not without their flaws. There's no perfect player unless your name is Ray Carter, because Ray Carter is a perfect player when he's on the court.
But I like
But
to hear.
yeah, but the overrated label, Ray, I think it's not fair. I think it's not fair. But I do believe a healthy Fox, a great bounce back season next year for 26-27, I think that would quiet a lot of the noise, wouldn't it?
Oh, definitely. I mean, look,
Yeah.
maybe we're talking about next season. It was a harsh first year, but that's what it was. This was his first time playing a full season with San Antonio and not halfway through. So the only thing we can do, like you're saying, is hope for a bounce back season, which he's an all-star caliber player, and we are more than comfortable saying he's going to bounce back.
All right. Well, there you have it. There's our back and forth regarding Bleacher Report listing De'Aaron Fox as one of the top 10 or the most ranked or one of the most overrated players in the NBA right now. He landed at number 8. Do you agree, disagree? It sounds like me and Ray, we're summing up saying like, well, we disagree that he shouldn't get that harsh label overrated. But what do you think? You agree, disagree? Let Ray know on X at RREYVING. That's our raving. See, he likes to put an extra R in his name. Raving on X. Follow me on X at Jeff G Spurs Zone. And don't forget, subscribe to Spurs in Focus on YouTube and on Substack. All right, let's close out the show with some quick news and notes. And by the way, Ray, have you seen the video coming out of France of Victor and who is it? It's Fox. It's Tobias Harris. It's Harrison Barnes, McLaughlin. If you look in the back, even Kelly Olynyk's there, Castle's there, Harper's there. They're all training, having a minicamp in France with Wemby. What are your thoughts on that?
I love it. Starting up the chemistry after a tough, playoff loss or finals loss, and it shows that this team, hey, they know their mistakes. They're building up that chemistry, and it's time to now lock in and keep that chemistry and keep that good vibe, energy into this coming season.
Absolutely. The start of training camp is still a few months away, but it feels like it's going to start like tomorrow or something. But it's still a couple of months away, month and a half, 2 months ish before training camp opens, all that good stuff. But hey, it's good to see the team back in action to a certain degree. And don't forget, Wemby will be playing with Team France this month at a qualifying event. So we'll get to see a little bit of him play. Just don't do anything dumb, Wemby. All right. You don't need to go up for 360 dunks landing on one leg. Nothing like that. Nothing like that. We don't need to have a heart attack in the off season. But yeah, Spurs are, at least some of them, not all of them, but a good chunk of his teammates, Wemby's teammates, are in France with them training ahead of the new season. Finally, Ray, let's talk about LeBron James. You're probably scratching your head like, what do you know about LeBron James? Is that a Spur? Over there, it's a 76er. But Rich Paul explained in a recent episode of Game Over why James, his client, did not join the Spurs. And basically, he's just saying that the Spurs, they were an NBA Finals team. They were the runner-up. And, quote, when you have a guy like Wemby, you have to respect his growth, his position on the Spurs. It is not easy. So it sounds like LeBron didn't choose the Spurs because of Wemby's big shadow there, and integrating into that system maybe would have been a little difficult for LeBron and the Spurs to get it going. What do you think about that? Did the Spurs dodge a bullet with LeBron not joining the Spurs? And what do you think about why? That is the reason why Rich Paul gave us why he didn't pick the Spurs.
I feel like I was somebody that wanted LeBron on the Spurs when the whole, chase was going on. But I do agree that, LeBron being there in San Antonio, unless he was announcing his retirement, which he hasn't even done that yet, it would have been, what do you see from Wemby with like a bunch of Wemby questions. And I do think that's a good thing because we haven't really seen what LeBron can do to a rookie, and who knows, maybe he unlocks Wemby's potential, but it comes to the point where, you're kind of taking your time to kind of downgrade his growth when he's going to be the face of the league, and now you're going to have to drop plays for LeBron to do his thing. And so I do think them kind of saying, hey, it's because Wemby, he's still growing. He's kind of made his face of the team, the Spurs. You got to respect that. As much as I would have wanted him in that black and silver, it makes sense for him to go to Philly, who yeah, they're still dealing with, Joel Embiid and Jaylen Brown. There's so many faces of that team that he could rely on rather than he has Wemby and a lot of emerging stars. So I do think it was the safest options for the Spurs. They were in the finals. You don't want to break up that chemistry. And I know he was willing to take that pay cut, but I do think there's a lot of options out in free agency that you could possibly get, whether it's another big, another wing that maybe could have fit. And we just signed a forward, which was Tobias Harris, who was a second scorer for Detroit in the playoffs. So I do think the Spurs kind of dodged a bullet there.
Yeah, I think so too. As much as it would have been like great to see him, James, in a Spurs uniform, one of the teams he played before he called it a season or a career, I should say. But I think it would have been just a media circus too.
Yep.
I think all eyes would have been on San Antonio, which is fine. More money, more ticket sales, more merch, all that good stuff. But ultimately, I think it may have been a distraction. Also, too, you can't bury him on the bench. Where were the minutes going to come from? Somebody was going to take a significant hit minute wise. Would have been Keldon? Could that have been Vassell? What if it was Harper? What it was Barnes? What it was Harris? We don't know. And he's just a big, big shadow next to another big shadow, that being Wemby. It would have been fun. It would have been great. But ultimately, I think the Spurs not bringing him here was the right decision. Even if he was on the Spurs radar, who knows? We don't know. We're not behind there. As many of these reports come out, but we were not in there, so we don't know. But ultimately, I think the Spurs, I want to say dodged a bullet, more like just avoided extra nuisances that would have came with it. He's still productive, despite his NBA age, because outside of the NBA, he's still young, but in the NBA, you're old. But he's still productive. But I think for him, going to the Sixers made the best basketball sense. That was the perfect spot for him. Gets out of the West, joins a loaded East team, the Sixers, where perhaps they can dominate that conference. Still got to get by the Knicks and maybe Boston. But ultimately, that was the best decision for him, and the best decision for the Spurs were maybe to get a guy like Tobias Harris. That's exactly what they need to address that forward spot. They did. So, but you're right, though. There were a lot of Spurs fans that were beating the drum. Get LeBron to San Antonio. Get LeBron to San Antonio. There were tons of them. And I thought there was for a minute, I thought it was going to happen. But ultimately, I think, it ain't going to happen as much as some Spurs fans wanted to happen. I just couldn't see it go down. But Ray, I heard you had your Spurs LeBron James jersey ready on order, right?
Yeah, I ordered it and I was like, it's going to happen. And I got the news and I was like, well, this could be either one of the greatest things I've made or it's going in the trash.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like the Kawhi Leonard Funko Pop Spurs versions. They all went in the trash. Remember Spurs fans had video of them burning them and throwing them away in the garbage? It was crazy. But there you have it. Some quick Spurs news and notes to wrap up this episode of Spurs in Focus. Hey, Ray, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. Tell everybody where they can follow you.
Of course, yeah. You can follow me on X at Ranting and Raving, RREYVING.
What do you always have to rant for, buddy? Why are you always in your soapbox?
Is this who I am? I gotta make a career out of it.
Hey, how was SummerSlam? Did you like it?
I like night 2 better than night 1. Night 1 was kind of a little bit slowish, but that main event of night 2, Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, it was peak, as the people say.
Yeah, there you go. See, follow Ray on X. He told you how to do it. Go do that right now. Ray, thank you for joining us here on Spurs in Focus. Once again, we appreciate it. And everybody else, we thank you for making Spurs in Focus your first and only spot for all things San Antonio Spurs. And subscribe to the other shows. Just subscribe here to Spurs in Focus. We are on YouTube, YouTube Music, iTunes, Spotify. What else you got? Amazon Podcasts, Pocket Cast. Pick a platform. We are there. The Substack is completely free. Spurs in Focus Substack. Go subscribe right now. Click subscribe. You become part of the crew. We'll be back, I think tomorrow. Yeah, we're back tomorrow with the live episode of Spurs in Focus. So get your questions ready. Me and Rudy Copples will be tackling whatever news is out there, Ray. It is definitely the NBA offseason right now. It is slow. But we'll talk about something. Maybe rehash this topic on the live episode of Sports Report, which is tomorrow. Ray, thank you again for joining us here And we thank y'all again for making Spurs in Focus your first and only spot for all things San Antonio Spurs. And, for Mr. Rey Carter, I am Jeff Garcia, and now you are in Focus with Spurs in Focus.